Welcome back to Power Play. Canada's top research body has announced it will work with the Chinese biopharmaceutical company CanSino Biologics to help develop a vaccine for COVID-19. Now, the National Research Council is starting to lay the groundwork for clinical trials of a candidate vaccine that's already received Chinese approval earlier this year. But all this comes amidst mounting concerns over China's reporting of COVID-19 data, a new Amnesty International Canada report that China is trying to silence and bully activists in Canada. And of course, we've got the two Michaels, Mr. Spavor and Mr. Kovrig, still stuck in a Chinese prison. So is Canada treading on thin ice, collaborating with a country at the heart of the global scrutiny? Or does this give Canada unfettered access to a potential COVID-19 vaccine? The former ambassador to China for Canada, Guy Saint-Jacques, joins us. And always great to see you, Guy Saint-Jacques, on the program. What do you make? How do they balance out all the scrutiny in China, all this report? Now we're suddenly working with them on a vaccine. Is it the right thing to do?
I would think so, because I think we are at the stage where we have to find a solution, and hopefully, getting a vaccine as quickly as possible would be very good. And I would say that we have to keep that separate from the way that China has been handling the crisis. On that, we have to press China, like other countries have done, for a complete investigation that would involve international experts. But this being said, there is good research taking place in China. We have a good basis for collaboration. The National Research Council has been working with this company since 2013. There are other companies as well that have linkages. In fact, what we would have to hope for as well is that American companies would get involved, because we really need to find a vaccine as quickly as possible.
But, sir, look, and I appreciate it, what's often called soft diplomacy and that soft diplomatic approach. But there's a difference between soft diplomacy and suck-up diplomacy. We have not publicly criticized the Chinese, as many other countries have. We have not had our two Canadians released from prison. We have not said much about the millions of defective PPE. And now there's this, I thought it was a rather startling report from Amnesty International Canada about how the Chinese government is trying to intimidate, bully, and harass Chinese critics right here in Canada. So given all that, is, quote, is this soft diplomacy or suck-up diplomacy?
Well, I would say the federal government is really stuck right here, because, Prime Minister has said himself that the priority is to get through the crisis. For that, we need to get as much supplies from China as possible. And of course, they are the first source of most equipment. And I think for that reason, the government, knowing how brutal China can be if you criticize them, I think they are afraid that any criticism would mean that the Chinese would close the taps. But in fact, with regard to an investigation, I think we would be in good company to require one. With regard to interference in Canada, I think that this is something that unfortunately has been going on for some time, that has been increasing in the last 8 months, I would say. The Chinese government is really increasing efforts to try to silence the Chinese community in Canada. And I think that that's something that we have to be really concerned and try to, that should be something where we have the right to intervene to ensure that our values and our laws are fully respected. And on that, the only language that China will understand is one of firmness.
Right. Well, and I'll quote the Canadian press story on this. Quote, groups led by Amnesty International Canada also say Ottawa's timid response to this foreign interference is exacerbating the problem. And they quote the article, Chinese state actors have almost certainly become emboldened by the inadequate responses of the Canadian officials. Do we need to be tougher on China?
I think so. And as I said, the only language that China will understand is firmness. When I was ambassador, there were cases where I had to go in and tell the Chinese, if we see other instances like this, we will cut all collaboration with you guys. And they stop their behavior. In this case, you're right. If you don't do anything, they will use they will force, in fact, their Chinese students in Canada to go after the Hong Kong supporters. They will go also against Canadians of Uyghur origin. they will try also to interfere with Canadian politicians of Chinese origin. And I think for all those reasons, we have to be vigilant. And as soon as we discover issues that would involve people working for the United Front War Department, either directly or under the cover of being here as diplomats, we should intervene quickly.